Good morning, everyone, again. A quick reminder at the beginning that we are recording this meeting. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Sylwia Słomiak. I represent Eurocities and the Prospect Plus team, and I work with you under the community of practice. Today, we have another meeting of our community of practice members, this time focused on crowd investing. A quick reminder, those meetings are available only to the members of the community of practice, so that we are in small groups. We have time to share experiences, discuss, ask questions. There is no obligation to speak, but we encourage you to also share your experiences, whether those are with some projects that you have implemented, or even with your opinions about the projects and the instruments that will be presented. So we will today focus on two very interesting projects. One in Croatia, and I'm looking at Sanela, who has been our mentor and an ambassador for innovative financing instruments. And she has worked with a few groups of mentees. And Jean-François started his adventure with Prospect as part of this mentoring group. And since then, he has also worked on a really interesting and very impressive project in Belgium. So we will talk about this. First, we'll give the floor to Jean-François, because his project is newest, and the freshest, let's say. He will talk us through the project. Then directly after his presentation, we will have time to talk. You can also write your questions or comments in the chat, and I will be going through them as we are in the meeting. And then we will move on to Sanela's project, and again, we will have time to discuss. And at the end of the meeting, please do share all your experiences, ideas, suggestions, and concerns, but also positive examples from your cities. One reminder, as we are unfortunately getting very close to closing Prospect Plus, we are organizing a final policy event in Brussels on the 11th of March. All of you are invited. I have shared the invitation with our network, but I will share it again. If you would like to be with us, we have an amazing lineup of speakers, panelists, representatives of the Commission, and we will share your experience with innovative financing instruments. Everything we do is to present your voice on what is needed for your cities to actually get less dependent on subsidies. Even though probably you don't want to get less dependent on subsidies, there will be a time when there is not so much public money available, and we want to make it clear and make it possible for the decision makers to understand what you need. So there is also this short survey that I am very passionate about, and I want to have as much contribution as possible. And I will send you another reminder to contribute if you have not done so yet. It takes between 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how much you want to share. Okay, so let's begin with Jean-François. If you have any questions or comments, do contribute in the chat. And Jean-François, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sylwia, for giving me the floor. Can you hear me?
Yes, everything is good.
Okay, let me share my presentation. Can you see it in full screen?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the floor, Sylwia. Indeed, I was a mentee in the Prospect Plus program, which was very, very useful, very inspiring, because myself in the municipality, I am head of in the municipality of Etterbeek in Belgium. I am head of the project development and financing service, which is a service that supports all the other colleagues in the municipality to develop their projects, to find budget financing schemes to be able to develop their projects, build with them the program, the schedule. So I am a supportive entity in the municipality for the development of policies and public projects. And of course, as always, the budget, the financing is always the tricky point. So my goal, my objective is to find innovative solutions thanks to Prospect Plus and other sources of inspiration. First of all, a short introduction, some facts and figures. Etterbeek is a municipality in Belgium. Belgium, you know, is a European country, and Brussels is the capital. And Etterbeek is actually one of the 19 municipalities of the Brussels region in the center of Brussels, as you can see here. We are a small municipality. Slide is not moving.
We can still see the map.
Yeah, me too. I click on the arrow and it doesn't go on.
Try with your keyboard, maybe, or with your mouse.
Trying. Let's move to the next one, like this. Not very orthodox. A few words about the municipality. We have a little bit less than 50,000 citizens. We are in the heart of the urban surrounding of Brussels, with a quite high density of population. And some facts. One of them is quite interesting, that the population is growing. Not thanks to migration, to internal migration, because the internal migration is negative. This means that Belgians leave Brussels to go in the surroundings, in the suburbs. On the contrary, there is a very positive international migration. So there are people from other countries, essentially European countries, come to live in Brussels, and in Etterbeek in particular, due to, as you may know, due to the presence of the main European institutions, like you can see there, the European Parliament. So the two are balanced, international and internal migration, but still the population is growing, and this is finally due to the natural balance, due to the births. One other interesting fact is that our population is very, very international. Again, due to the proximity of the European institution, embassies, and so on. We also have the headquarters of the NATO in Brussels, you may know. So in total, we have almost one citizen out of two, which is not Belgian. This is very, very specific and particular, because not a lot of cities have that in their population. Of course, many of these foreigners are Europeans, and the first foreign community is the French. 60% of the households are single person, typically the young worker, the young international worker. This is much more than the Brussels average as a whole. Now it's working, the point. But just for you to know that our budget overall, our municipal budget annually, our operating budget is a bit less than 100 million, and our investment budget is a bit less than 20 million euro. And this investment budget is shared between different investment projects, like our administrative buildings, office buildings, also maintenance and renovation of schools, also have a local hospital, etc. As you can see, there is something strange in Etterbeek compared to the average of the other Brussels municipalities. It is because in the last years we have completely we've built a completely new town hall, which shows this quite unusual share of administrative I mean, this important share of investment in administrative building. Now, this was the introduction. Let me tell you some words about our carbon issues, energy issues, etc. As everyone, as every city, we want to decrease our environmental footprint, and we want to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions for the municipality. The figures you can see here are quite typical for a Western city. So the main bulk, the most important part of our direct greenhouse gas emissions are from the buildings. And within that, you can see that only 2% is from our municipal buildings. A share of 20% more or less is for the offices, let's say, and a big part is the houses, private houses. And the rest essentially is mobility, cars, etc. So what can we do with that? A plan, strategy. And we've called it Carbon Budget of Etterbeek. And this is to basically tackle the challenges I mentioned in the slide before. Our goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by steps until the carbon neutrality by 2050, like the European the European Union wants us to do. And for that, our action plan includes 18 measures ranging from energy performance of buildings, both private and public. Also, issues on mobility. These are the two main issues, as you've seen before. But we don't neglect food issues, for instance, and other issues. So in total, our 18 measures are shared like this into categories. I will not go into detail because this is not the purpose of my presentation. Budget-wise, if we want to implement this carbon budget for Etterbeek by 2030, you can see that overall it is at the very low estimate 23 million euro. In fact, it will probably be much more. And the most important part of this budget goes to the renovation of our public buildings in terms of energy renovation. The rest is for operating budgets. Now, what are the sources of financing to do that? As a municipality, this is always the same. We can manage to get subsidies, funds, and grants. This is part of the solution. We can also loan money at the bank. We can also levy taxes, of course, which is very popular, as you know. And we also have paying services like, for instance, the renewal of the ID cards. Citizens, when they do that, they pay us a fee, but this is not a lot. And finally, last but not least, because all what I just mentioned is not enough, in fact, to find 23 million euro in a few years. So we need other types of solutions, like innovating financing solutions, such as crowdlending, which is the subject of my presentation. A bit of theory to start with. Because before we implemented this crowdlending campaign that I will present you later, we've done a bit of research and investigation because it is something new for a municipality. And we were thinking, how can we use and how can we encourage small investors in the municipality, citizens, to lend or to give money to the municipality for its carbon budget plan. There is the first type of crowdfunding. The first category is what we could call participatory sponsorship. Basically, it is as simple as donations. Okay, like charity institutions can ask people, population, to donate, to give a bit of money. One of the interests for that is that the donors can benefit tax reduction in Belgium of 45% if they make donations, which is interesting, but unfortunately not for a municipality, because to get this tax reduction, the institution to which you make your donation has to be registered as a charity institution, which is not the case by law for a municipality, unfortunately. Another option we have studied, we have envisaged, was the in-kind donation, sometimes called crowdsourcing. For example, when a local company performs insulation works at cost price. This was an option, but that we have not finally selected, because we don't expect that donation in kind or in money will levy a lot of budget for the municipality. Another option was what we called crowd equity sometimes, and basically it's about selling shares. So like a normal company or a cooperative. So those who invest in that project are co-owners. Thanks to their shares, they are co-owners of the project. One of the essential aspects of this is that once they have their share, they also take part in the governance rights of the project. They can, for instance, vote at the assemblies. But we didn't think that it was a good option for what we wanted to do at the municipality, because we thought it might become difficult to co-decide, to co-share the decisions all the times for our projects with a multitude of share owners in the population. Whereas sometimes this option can be very, very useful and very and great to implement. Now, finally, let's move to crowdlending. Which is the option that we have selected. Basically, crowdlending is simply the municipality borrows money from small investors in the population, preferentially in the local population, with a promise to repay the capital, the principal, and also with the promise to pay interests or not, because it is not an obligation. These interests rates can be fixed or variable, and actually this type of crowdfunding, called crowdlending, is covered by law, by a European regulation 2020/1503, and I will explain you a little bit about this regulation. In the past, this regulation about crowd lending was not accessible for municipalities because of the definition of what a project owner was. In the past, it excluded municipalities. Now it has changed since 2020, and public bodies, including local public bodies, are eligible to this regulation and can be considered as project owners. This is the first important development of this regulation, which allows us as Etterbeek municipality to start our project. The other change in this regulation, in this revised regulation, is the fact that now financing services which perform crowdfunding have to be registered, authorized by a superior authority, and in the form of a single European status allowed by national authorization, but covered by the regulation, by the EU regulation, and this actually protects the investor, because these companies, which are intermediary between the project owner, like the municipality, and the investor, the small investors. So this intermediary, which is a financial company, must accept a few obligations like transparency requirements, conflict of interest management, complaints handling, etc., etc. For you to know, in Belgium, as of April 2024, there were 7 such registered authorized companies in Belgium, and there were 50 in France. In other countries in Europe, I don't know, but there are a few. So what do we want to do with crowd lending in the municipality of Etterbeek? As I mentioned, but I repeat it here, we want basically to attract the interest of small investors, mainly the residents, mainly the inhabitants, the businesses, the shops in the Etterbeeks, those who are interested in local development. They give us their savings, and in return, we repay the capital, of course, and a reasonable interest over a set period of time. And the amount that we borrow from them is invested by the municipality in climate projects contributing to the carbon budget that I mentioned, such as typically energy renovation of public buildings. And to our knowledge, this is probably the first, this is for sure the first time that a local public authority has done that in Belgium, crowdlending, and possibly beyond Belgium also, but we may, in the discussion later, you may be aware of other projects that I don't know in your countries. The first step was to launch a public procurement to select a financial company who would do for us the intermediate body to launch the crowdfunding. But there's been a lot of discussions actually with our supervisory authorities because it was completely innovative and pioneering. And so we spent months in discussions with our partners, with our supervisory authorities, to make sure that it was okay with the law, what would be the possible problems, study all the options, etc., to make sure that we were that everything was fine and that all the lights were green before launching a public procurement to recruit a financial partner. But finally, it's our supervisory authority, which is actually the Brussels region, said, okay, we've checked everything and you can launch your designation of financial partner. So the idea of this public procurement to design our crowdfunding service provider was to, the role of this entity is to connect the municipality with the investors in the frame of a framework agreement of 4 years. And during that period, actually, with this partner, the municipality can decide to launch one or more crowdfunding operations. In terms of jargon, it is called a competitive procedure with negotiation, with 2 main phases. If you are used to public procurement, you know that there is a first step for applications, and then the applicants send their final offer. The contract not the crowdfunding, but the contract with the intermediary, with the financial intermediary, was less than 214,000 euros. So we did not have to make a European publication. And finally, and this would allow, in partnership with this financial intermediary, to do 1 or 2 crowdfunding campaigns over the 4 years for a total of 3.5 million euro, more or less. The idea is, again, to finance our carbon budget, as I mentioned. And always the municipality reserves the right not to proceed with the crowdfunding operation. Okay, to select this intermediary, this financial intermediary, there were selection criteria, there were award criteria, there was a process. I will not go into too much detail. In the end, we selected our crowdlending service provider, which is Spread. You may know or not this company. And their service is, of course, not for free. They have a setup fee, they have a success fee, management fee, etc. And for the total, so their contribution, their job represents a few percentage of the amount that will be raised during the crowdlending campaign. Of course, in addition to this cost, so we pay the financial service provider, but we also have, and then we collect money from the population, and we have to refund their capital and on interest rate also for the investors, for the residents in Etterbeek who have lent money. And the interest rate for Etterbeek residents, we have decided that we put it at 4.5% and a bit lower for investors who would not be resident of Etterbeek, and this rate is 4%. So you may think, okay, it costs finally a lot, but what are the advantages? First of all, I will not go into detail, but I let you know that there is an accounting strategy system in the municipal accounting system that allows for increasing the municipal investment budget thanks to this crowdlending, which is completely different from a loan at the bank. So it is purely an accounting issue, but this is a way that allows us to invest money, to have an investment budget, a kind of hidden investment budget, which is sorted in another part of the municipal budget. First thing. The second thing is that it allows for a quick access to liquidity. Then also it is usually a short-term loan, and as you know, in a short-term loan, the interests are lower. Finally, the total interest paid are lower than in a long-term loan. You know, we all know that. For instance, when we make a loan for our own private house. Also, I mentioned that the interest rate that we use was 4.5 or 4%, which is quite high. But in the next campaign, because it was kind of a launching campaign, we wanted to attract the interest of the investors. But we know that this type of fundraising can go for relatively low interest rates, lower than 4.5 and 4. Under some conditions, if we have a good marketing, if we have a local project, if we have a virtuous project and visible and quick results, in those situations, investors are keen on accepting relatively low interest rates, lower than 4 or lower than 4.5. And that's what we will try in the next crowdfunding campaign. Next thing, the energy investments are expected to generate savings. So this compensates a little bit the cost of the operation. And last but not least, there is a positive outcome in terms of results and image for the municipality. So spreads, the financial intermediary that we selected helps us in 3 ways. First of all, they have helped us in developing the financial formulas. Like, for instance, we have decided the interest rate, as I mentioned before. We have decided also what will be the repayment frequency, and it is 6 months. The long duration was also decided together with them, and we have decided to make it last 18 months. And the funding campaign duration was open in September and was supposed to last 40 days more or less, but I will show you that it lasted much, much less because it was so successful. Spreads also supports us for the fundraising campaign itself. So essentially, they develop a web platform. This is their main job. So they develop a web security with all standards of security, a platform which is the intermediary between us, the project owner, and the small investors, which are essentially the population of Etterbeek. So they design this platform, which has to have in it a certain number of mandatory documents, like a document called key information sheet, which is an obligation due to the regulation that I mentioned before, 2020/1503. They have to be able to identify the investors and collect their data in compliance with the GDPR, of course. There is also a mandatory investor knowledge test, because not everybody is authorized to loan money like this. We have to make sure that these are people with a limited, which are sufficiently aware of what they are doing. Of course, they have to finally pay their investment, so by bank transfer or by credit card. The amount collected must be monitored, etc., etc. And this is done by spreads, essentially via the web platform. And finally, spreads also supports us in during the loan duration. First of all, if there are questions from investors, they answer in first line. If the projects are concerned, if the question concerns the project, they give it they forward us the question. They, of course, essentially, this is very important, they calculated the repayment of the loans, the repayment of the capital, of the interest, and you may know that there is the difference between a gross and net interest, because in between the state takes a withholding tax of 30%, and they support us in managing all kinds of incidents. I talked about the project, but what is the project that was funded? It was a project of daycare for 56 children. A daycare with a social pricing means that the fees that the parents pay are proportional to their income. And the building, because it is related to the carbon budget, as I mentioned, so the building presents a very high energy performance. And the construction started, in fact, in May 2024 and is scheduled to last until 2026. As I mentioned, the subscription for crowdlending was supposed to last from early September to mid-October 2024, but in one single day, we actually managed to raise the 1.2 million expected. So it lasted only one day instead of 40, because it was absolutely amazingly successful. So I don't repeat that the interest was 4.5 or 4% for the investors, repayable in 3 installments of 6 months over the 18 months of the subscription. We had a little bit less than 100 investors in total, with an average investment amount of 14,000 euro. The majority were small investors, 1 to 2,000 euro, and there were a few larger investors which invested as a single person over 20,000 euro. 64% of them were residents of Etterbeek, and from Etterbeek, they all together subscribe for 84% of the total. And this is the information session that took part in September 4th in our city hall. As you can see, there was a lot of people present at this meeting, interested, asking questions, etc. Now, a few good practices from our limited experience, but still I may share. First of all, which kind of project should you choose if you want to use crowdlending? I believe that this project should be local, virtuous, and quickly visible, because this is what expect the residents. It should be already planned or started, and because people want to see results quickly of what we've done with their money. And the project, by the way, the project should already be included in the budget and should be realized, financed anyway without crowdlending, which should be considered as a support. For instance, our kindergarten, our daycare for children costs in total 5 million. So we got 1.2 million from the citizens, but the rest is directly financed on our own funds. And of course, the more energetic, the more your project is virtuous in terms of energy, the more you will save money in the end. And this is a way of compensating the interest that you have to repay. As I mentioned, in this type of project, we have realized, not the first time, but for the future, we believe that we can go for interest rates that are relatively low, still to be attractive. But if you consider that the project is low risk, because this is a service body, this is a public body, it is local, it is virtuous, etc., we believe that the people are inclined to accept a relatively low interest rate, maybe 3%. Well, of course, depending of the general interest rate, of course, also this can differ from 1 year to another. Another thing that we realize is that sometimes if you give a symbolic gift to the investors, like a free subscription to the municipal swimming pool, they feel like, wow, this costs virtually nothing to the municipality, but they have the feeling, the investors, that they receive something valuable. And of course, and also, something that we want to explore, and that is pretty promising, is the possibility to repay the loans, not in money, in cash money, but through exemption from municipal taxes. This is difficult to implement in terms of law, etc., but we believe it is a promising development value. The loan duration should be relatively short, because people want their money back in a relatively short term. And also something to say about the investment range. If you want to do crowd lending for your municipality, you have to absolutely to put a maximum and minimum limit of the amount the people can invest. The minimum, why? Because otherwise you have people investing 50, 100 euro, what we call love money, but it is heavy management behind and it is not recommended. On the other side, you should also provide a maximum investment amount to make sure that there will be a sufficient number of investors and not one or two super rich investors, which will ruin, in fact, the citizen participation nature of the project. Some good practice about the campaign, the marketing campaign. Think of creating a rush effect. It is important to start the marketing campaign well before the subscription opens. Also to begin with a private phase reserved to the local residents. And as I mentioned before, offer an advantage to early investor like a small gift. And also, why not try to obtain, of course, in respect with the law, prior kind of informal agreement from a few larger investors who will launch the process. So it can kind of reassure the smaller investors that are maybe more cautious. Okay. We believe that the marketing campaign should be local because this is one of the main ideas is to find local money to develop local projects. So it is more important to our thinking to have a physical non-digital campaign than something only based on website, like local newspapers, flyers in mailboxes, information sessions, site visits, etc. For the fundraising duration, quite short, as you've seen, 1 month. Finally, we made it in 1 day, so it doesn't need to be long, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jean-François, for sharing a wealth of knowledge. There's a lot of information, and also thank you for preparing such full slides, because I think it will be an amazing resource for many of us, also in this meeting, but also those who couldn't join. Thank you very much. We have a few questions. First of all, we are running a little bit behind the time, but I think we have covered so much already that it's not a big problem. We have a first question in the chat from Piotr. What about combining the crowdfunding with higher investments like for city districts supported by the private and commercial money? Do you think it's possible, or a better way would be to separate these areas?
I almost cannot hear you. I'm sorry. There was kind of. Can you repeat?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So the question is in the chat from Piotr. What about combining the crowdfunding with higher investments, so bigger investments like in the city heating district, supported by the private and commercial money? Is it possible in your view to separate these areas, or is it better to separate these areas?
I don't think it's of course, I give a general answer, but I think crowdfunding is a way of co-funding a bigger project. As I mentioned, our kindergarten was also funded by different sources of financing. So why not? Why not? I would say, yeah, I think it's possible. It needs to be further investigated, but in principle, I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions? You can raise your hand and turn on your mic or turn on your webcam. If not, I have 2 quick questions. I was wondering if it was difficult to convince residents to something, this new way of investing? And also, if you, what is combined really with that, if there was any criticism of this approach, because like you mentioned, there were extra costs. You had to have an intermediary and you had to pay the intermediary. So there were extra costs as compared to using only your municipal budget or using subsidies. How did you deal with that?
Okay. First of all, the confidence of the residents, of the small investor, was very high. As I mentioned, in one single day, we received like a shower of 1,200,000 euro. So for that, there was no problem. The confidence comes from the fact that we have a strong leadership in the municipality. Our mayor is very good in communication. He's there for more than 30 years, and people trust him. Also, simply the fact that we are a public body, and in general, public bodies cannot bankrupt. So when you borrow money to them, you are more or less sure to get your money back. Now, criticism, there was no criticism so far. It can come, who knows, because it's true that we have to pay an intermediary, which represents extra costs. This extra cost is not for the investor, it's for us. Of course, we use, if you look, we use public money, we use taxpayer money, so we could be criticized for that. But one thing is that we are obliged to use this intermediary due to the European regulation. If the European regulation would not be there, we might be our own crowdfunder. We might become our own intermediary and manage ourselves the platform. Why is there such a regulation? Is to protect the money that is put there by the investor. This is the main reason. So this is a valuable reason to pay extra costs. And the other thing is that whatever you do, there are extra costs. When you receive a subsidy, you have to spend a lot of time in administrative paperwork, etc., which represent one full-time equivalent, for example, for a big project, and this is also a cost. So you have to compare very carefully the different ways to finance your project, but in all cases, there will be kind of extra costs.
Thank you. I guess that as a way to convincing people that the argument of direct gains for them in the form of interest rate is quite convincing. This is something that they cannot benefit otherwise. We have 2 more questions, but we are running behind time. So if I could suggest that you answer the questions in the chat, and we can come back to it at the end, or we can come back to these questions individually, if that's fine for everyone. And now let's move on to Sanela, so we make sure she also has time to present her project, which was also partly inspiration for Jean-François. And if we have enough time, we will then answer more questions. Remember, you are members of the community of practice, so there is a lot of opportunities to mingle and network within the group. Sanela,
if I may, indeed, Sanela is kind of at the origin of our of the development of our Audi and of our project,
which also makes our Prospect
and Prospect Plus, in the context of
Prospect Plus team very proud that we have managed to connect you. Okay, Sanela, go ahead with your presentation, and again, everyone, please do write your comments in the chat, and we will get back to all of you.
Okay, hello everyone, and I'm very proud that you used our example to make your project, and it's you see that it's way better than our example, but that is something that like you have mastered us. So I'm very proud of you. Let me just shut my camera, but share my screen. Okay. I hope you can see my presentation. Okay, so
yes,
now I have the problem with okay, it's going on. Town of Križevci is a very small town in near Zagreb, in Croatia. We have less than 20,000 inhabitants, but we are very known for our energy transition goals. And our mayor is very eager to make our city energy independent by 2030. So we had like 2 public buildings, 2 solar power plant installations, both 30 kilowatts. And the project was implemented 7 years ago. So these are our 2 buildings. As I said, 2 public buildings, development center and technological park. Was the first building, and we had like crowdlending campaign. In 10 days, we collected 30,000 euros. Average investment was 566 euros. And we offered 4.5% interest rate on 10 years contract duration. So we have a monthly rent of 400 euros. That's the estimation of energy savings through solar power plant on the building. We have had minimum and maximum investments because we wanted to have as much as possible investors. And as also as Jean said, we didn't want to have 1 or 2 big investors. It was the idea to test how citizens are willing to invest, how many we can have in the project. That's why we had like minimum and maximum. And on the second, it was a year later, our city library. It was a 2-day campaign with 40 investors, the same minimum and maximum amount, and pretty much the same average investment, but the interest rate was like 3% because the use of the produced electricity is not so good like in the previous building. But we have again a 10 years contract duration and a little bit lower monthly rate because the energy savings are also lower. It was a 23,000 euros investment. It's a little bit lower investment, although it's also 30 kilowatt of power plant. But in 1 year, and the prices were lower, so we have a little bit lower investment. But how this is working? So the city didn't want to have direct connection with the investors because of the administration, and it's not easy to take the money from the citizen. We didn't have any crowdfunding legislation. We still don't have our national regulation on this. So we have Green Energy Cooperative as a mediator between citizens, investors, and the city, actually the user. The user of the building is also the city companies, so entrepreneurship center in first case, and the public library is also owned by the city. So investors are giving microloans to Green Energy Cooperative. So it's a contract on 10 years. Your investment is secured because you have a contract that is obligation for Green Energy Cooperative. And Green Energy Cooperative has a lease agreement for equipment to user of the building. So the solar power plant is in ownership of the Green Energy Cooperative, and they are leasing their equipment to the building, which is paying on monthly rent through 10 years to Green Energy Cooperative. As I already said, the rent is fixed on the energy savings estimation, And then Green Energy Cooperative is repaying loans to citizens on an annual basis. So we have this monthly repayment between user and project owner because of some kind of security that they will pay and that the Green Energy Cooperative will collect the money, and then on the annually basis to investors because of the administration and high costs if we would repay it every month. And what was the role of the city? They gave the permission to set up the power plant on the roof of the buildings in their ownership. They also gave public support for the project, and they were actively involved in the promoting of the project. Mayor was on all of the workshops with the citizens, and in all media. It was a first crowdfunding campaign in Croatia in such a way, and it was very popular. So everyone wanted to write about it. It was on all newspaper, on all TV shows, so very popular. But also the city took over payment of the rent in case the user will not be able to repay it. That was, I think, something that gave trust to citizens because it was secured that they will get the money back. And it was also logically because the city is owner of the building and also established the entrepreneurial center and the public library. Why was this a success? Such a success for everyone in the project. The main factor was the community engagement. Component. So Green Energy Cooperative connected also in the project Greenpeace, Energy Cities, regional energy agency. So it was very important to have the wide community to support the project. But also through the campaign, we worked with all NGOs in the city, with all the public institutions, with whoever we could engage in the project, in the promotion. 30% of the investors were from Križevci. So it was a national project because Green Energy Cooperative was not sure because it was the first time project in Croatia, and we were not sure if citizens are interested in such projects in the investments. So we were talking about going national, but 30% was from Križevci, the city itself. It was a great promotion for a municipality as enabler that helped innovation to happen and engage public institutions and citizens in a joint process. It also opened the door to participation in several new projects, also for the city, but also for the Green Energy Cooperative. And in 2020, citizens from Križevci established their own local energy cooperative, so that they will be able to drive local energy transition on their own. It also increased demand for solar equipment, resulting in new solar businesses and new jobs creation in local community. After the project, now we have more than 200 household solar power plants installed. People are very interested to produce their own energy and to make savings. So it's also due to local energy cooperative clique that promoted this kind of projects and helped citizens to implement solar power plants on their rooftops. So it was like community engagement. It was a demo project, so now we had a new way model, I would say. Green Energy Cooperative established a new cooperative, especially for investments. And in this new model, everyone that is wanting to invest in solar equipment is also a member of the cooperative. In our Križevci case, so investors are not member of the cooperative, they are just loaning the money. But in a new model, if you want to invest, you need to be a member of the cooperative. So you have a share in a cooperative, you have a share in the project, and then you earn money from the at the end of the year. In this case, cooperative is owner of the solar equipment and also members. And they are not doing this model of energy savings. They are just producing the energy and selling on the market. So that's the difference. I was very short, but I'm open for your questions. It's not easy to understand this model for the first time, so it's easier to go through the questions if you have.
Thanks a lot, Sanela. And also, I always thought that your project is a great example of finding a way of implementing such an innovative new way of funding projects when the national regulations have not been adapted yet. Because as you mentioned to us at some point, it was, you mentioned here now as well, it was not possible. Could you tell us a bit more about those barriers on the national level in terms of the regulations and how you went around it to make this project happen?
Yeah, so as I said, we didn't have and still don't have regulations on crowdfunding to use it in municipality projects. We don't have any national or local providers for such projects. So that's why we used a cooperative, because that is something that is regulated. As a cooperative, you can take money from citizens to investors or members and use it to finance whatever you want. So you have clear regulations there, and that's why this was the only model that we could use it in our project. But now with as we still don't have the regulation, now this model of becoming a member of cooperative is more suitable, because in Križevci project for cooperative is not good to have like lots of investments on this way through loans, because then you are not, well, it's your debt, and then you have problems financing other projects. So it's great for small projects and etc. But for bigger investments, it's better to be a member of cooperative and then invest as a member of cooperative.
And something that stood out to me when both of you were speaking about your project is that you both mentioned the role of your mayors, their involvement and support for the project, also that the residents have in your in the mayors. So I guess this is something worth emphasizing, that the mayors have to be on board, especially when these kind of instruments are quite new. There is a question from Joanna. Was it the only source of investment or only part of it for your project, Sanela?
Yes,
and how big part was it?
Yeah, that was 100% investment through Citizens Loan.
Because it was a relatively small project that you used as a pilot.
Yes, yes. And also now 7 years later, actually none of the city in Croatia didn't replicate the project, because like we have also problem with the trust in cooperatives. We have this history with cooperatives, and people are not willing to cooperate with cooperatives, especially municipalities. But also this new project model that this now has, I think they also did it only with Križevci. We still are waiting for other cities to be more brave. There are too much of on traditional ways of financing projects. They all are waiting for EU money, for EU programs, but this is something that we will not have all the time, and we need to see the new models. Also, we don't have a good examples with the public-private partnerships. We had few projects that were not successful, or was not successful here in Croatia. So a lot of space to work with our municipalities for new financing models.
And Miroslav is also asking, does it mean that you haven't had similar projects after that one? Because you mentioned that there is this new model, right? That people would now need to join the cooperative, but does it mean that similar project has not happened yet?
Yeah, so we had this new model was 1 year ago, implemented also in Križevci with one solar power plant on 200 kilowatts. But they had some also problems, and they should now build the power plant. So it's going very slowly. They were also waiting for feed-in tariff program because the prices are very low, and it's not so there's no money in it. So you cannot promise to investors, members of the cooperative, some big money in this. So yeah, there are some problems also in our energy sector in Croatia. So we are hoping for better days.
That's a very good point, actually, to maybe also ask Jean-François, I understand that there are some differences in Belgium and in Croatia in terms of the regulations. You mentioned, Sanela, feed-in tariffs that would be the basis for you to be able to repay with the promised interest. Jean-François, how did you go about ensuring that you would have this extra money to pay the residents back, not only what they paid, but also with the interest? And you also know each other's projects well, so I guess you can also comment on the main differences between your approaches.
What I can tell you is that we certainly had a long checking discussion with our control authorities, because it was the financial authority, the regional finance authority, also the authority on public procurement, etc., to make sure that everything was secure and to make sure that we would be able, first of all, not to lose the capital money of the investors, first of all. And this is the reason why there is this European regulation. And then to be able to reimburse also the interest rates. And that was, we had to show that in our budget, in our accounting tables, there was this money set aside, etc., etc. Of course, in the end, the main source of financing for a municipality is the tax. So this is a bit strange, but the money for us to repay the capital and the interest of the residents is the tax of the residents themselves, because there is no other way for a public body, full stop. But if you do so, you have the feeling, and the investor have the feeling, that their taxes are used in a good way.
And they are also benefiting, so they are paying their taxes, but then they are making money on contributing to the municipal project.
And they receive money, and they can themselves, or their children can themselves benefit of the investment. They can put their children in the kindergarten. If we renovate the swimming pool, which is our next project, they will themselves go swimming with their family in the swimming pool. So this makes a big difference.
Do you think that in your case, do you think in your cases, the residents are aware that the municipality does not have resources to do everything as quickly as everyone would want to? Or is there also this attitude, maybe it's more about the Eastern Europe, that residents believe it's the municipality who needs to find the money and not ask them to contribute? Do you think there is a cultural mindset difference that affected both of your projects?
I don't know, Sanela, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I would just add that we had lots of comments in our local community, like, why are you using our money? Can you not use it, EU funds? So you're not able to use EU funds. You need to have better people in the municipality to use EU funds. Like, yeah, they were like, we are used to it, but in the end, like 30-40 years ago, it was very popular for community, for citizens to invest in local infrastructure. So we were giving our money to have telecommunication infrastructure. We were giving our money for having utility infrastructure. And we're just giving the money. It was not investment that you will have a return on something. You had, like, in return, you had the service that you are paying now. But now, like, people forgot that we already had crowdfunding.
I believe in Belgium, people are aware that the public bodies are not rich. At least they don't have savings. And it is totally the contrary for the private households. There was a study in Belgium, every household has more or less 100,000 euro savings, and they do nothing with it. So the idea is to make this money circulate in the economy. And I think not everybody, but a number of people are aware of that. Investors, public investors like us, or even private investors, don't have that much savings, and they have to raise money in the form of shares, in the form of municipal or public bonds, or in the forms of loans at the bank. And in the end, it's up to the people who have their savings used for nothing to have this mindset and to put it available for the community, of course, with the security of getting back the capital and, if possible, an acceptable rate also of interest.
And
but yeah, this needs education. This needs education, because when you say when people say, "Oh, you municipality, why don't you finance it on your own?" But my money at the municipality is your money as taxpayer. So yeah, there is a need of education, because people are not always aware of how the flows of money go.
And either way, it's their money.
Yeah,
taxpayers'
exactly.
money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how do you because when we talk about this very ambitious energy transition that all local authorities and countries have to go through in the next few years, like the scale is huge, and there will not be enough subsidies. The investment plans, the plans for all the projects, large-scale transformation, are really ambitious. To what extent do you think that crowdfunding, crowdlending, crowd investing can play a role? Or do you think it's just kind of an extra instrument or just part of the whole transformation investment plan that needs to happen? Because that's also sometimes something I hear from people with no experience with crowdfunding when they say, oh, this is a bit like a pet project, but it doesn't have a sufficient potential to really contribute to energy transformation on the local level.
I am not a macroeconomist, so I cannot answer, but I think it's a fairly interesting question, because I think the solution is in the construction of using different sources of financing for the investments, but also on the other side, reducing, of course, the consumption, making sure that the are well regulated, etc., to reduce, do good investment, but also reduce the cost.
Sanela, and in your case, go ahead, Jean-François.
A last thing on the topic we discussed before. People say, why don't you municipality use your own money to do something, to do the investment? I would say it's better for the citizen that I use his money and I give back the capital plus interest than using my money, because my money is his money in terms of in the form of tax. So it's certainly much profitable for the citizen to loan money than to accept simple taxes.
I agree. But also, like, we already are giving our money to pension funds, and if you invest in some funds, and they are already are investing in energy transition. But I think that also our local entrepreneurs should be a big part of this investment chain. Because they have money, they are like making lots of creative ways to have at the end of the year to have not so much money on their accounts to pay less taxes. So why not invest in local community projects rather than buy a new car or something just to have a little money to pay taxes? So I think that there is a big potential. Also in Croatia, we have millions and millions of savings that are just like somewhere, and I think it's a good way to put this money in investments.
So it's not just laying under the bed.
Yeah,
it's actually used. Mm-hmm.
One thing I still wanted to mention, the problem is for a very small part in the public authority. In fact, the big effort to be done, at least what I mentioned in a urban area like Etterbeek, is the private housing. There, a lot of investment, and first of all, the most important part of the greenhouse gas emission is from the private houses, not from the municipal building, and from the private cars. So, okay, they can complain with the public is not enough, but the biggest effort, at least in a urban context, must come from the private. So their savings, if they don't want to give it in a crowdfunding for the municipality, at least please use it to renovate your own house and make it better in terms of energy performance.
Yes, and there is this comment from Miroslav that there is still a lot to do about the energy literacy of citizens. So really education and changing mindset to the new reality that we are living in. Just checking if anyone in our room has any experience with citizen finance, similar projects, maybe a little bit different approaches, and would like to share your experience, maybe some of the barriers that you have seen. And I'm also curious, Sanela and Jean-François, having your experience, would you have any recommendations for decision makers, both on the regional, national, and European level, to make this kind of project easier, maybe more profitable, easier for you to manage? There has been some positive regulatory changes, which Jean-François explained, but is there anything else that you would recommend happens to make it easier both for you and for those who have not started yet? It's perfect as it is.
No. At least in the urban context, as I mentioned, a very huge effort needs to be done for the private houses to make them more performant in terms of energy. So if the public sector, if the law, if the grants can focus on that, primarily, it would be a very good thing. Like, facilities, make it easy for the people to renovate their house in terms of urban permits, in terms of getting loans at a very low rate, in terms of getting subsidies, in terms of getting technical support, whatever. That would be in a urban context as Brussels. It's the priority. In fact, it's the renovation, or at least decrease the greenhouse gas emission from the private house and from the private offices.
And you also mentioned that under the current regulations, there needs to be an intermediary to secure the money. But if I understood correctly, it could have been easier for you if you didn't have to have this intermediary. Would that be something that you would like to get explored? Or do you think that the security aspect is really important enough to keep it as it is?
I believe that this regulation 2020/1503, which secures the money from the investors in a crowdlending campaign, is built for private investors, with the risk that the private investor can go bankrupt or can take a flight and escape in Panama, whatever. But this is not the case of a municipality. So I believe this regulation should have a special article saying that for public bodies, we are not obliged, or something that allows us to make our own to escape the obligation of this intermediary. Yeah, it would be a good thing.
That, I think, is a very concrete postulate that we can mention during our final event, when we have both representatives of the European Commission and the financial institutions in the room. We have 3 minutes left, so any final comments? I can see that there's something new popping up in the chat. Any final comments from you, Sanela and Jean-François? Anything you would like to mention before we close now?
Yeah, well, I mostly agree with Jean, but also I think that we need to have maybe more, like, from state to state. There are different translations of EU directives, and I think that we need to work more on that, because we need to have, like, if we are having some EU directives, they should be like the same in every country, not different. But also I think that we need to have more utilization of private investments, should also be followed by tax policies. If we want for citizens and for companies to invest in local projects, I think that they should have some better taxes policies. But yeah, I think that as we are seeing this all the problems we have now within European Union, I think that subsidies will be lower and lower. So we should be very prepared to use the money we have in our under the bed and in our socks, and to multiply it in the best way we can.
I think that's a perfect summary and ending to our meeting today. I would love to thank you for your contribution and your hard work to prepare these presentations that are full of content and will be very useful for everyone who has not had this experience. So huge thank you, and for your involvement in Prospect over the years, because this is exactly what we were hoping to achieve, linking municipalities and cities together. I have shared in the chat the link to our policy survey again, because it's really the last moment to contribute. I am working now on putting together all your recommendations, all your postulates, and also your reality on the local level. So do contribute to that within this week, let's say. It really takes just a few minutes. If you have contributed already, you can update your contribution in case you've changed your mind this way or another. And we invite you to follow us. We will send you more information about the final event, but also the outcomes of the final event, the recommendations, and what can happen later on.